Years ago, I used to play in a band with a saxophone player, Johnny, and I remember noticing that he had all kinds of really cool licks and that they were very different than the licks that we tend to play on guitar. It makes sense because if you learn saxophone, you're learning from a whole different tradition and a whole different group of musicians that came before you. Years later, one of my guitar students here came and asked me to transcribe a certain lick for him. And it wasn't a guitar player, it was a saxophone player, David Sanborn. And it's an amazing lick, and it got me thinking about Johnny and all his cool licks and how maybe as guitar players, sometimes what we should do is we should learn licks from other musicians. We should steal their licks. Now for the life of me, I can't seem to remember what song this lick was even from, but I remember the lick because it's very cool. So here we're gonna break it down so that we understand it, and then we're gonna apply it to the guitar. What this lick is going to do is it's going to take us a little out of minor pentatonic. In fact, what we're going to create is a chromatic line that runs from the minor third all the way to the fifth. But let's back up and explain what I mean. So we'll take A minor pentatonic because at least we're probably all comfortable with that, right? So if I take A from the bottom string E here and just play my easy shape, I have that. And then if I put the blue notes in, sometimes we would call that the A blues scale, but it's basically minor pentatonic with the blue notes. Now keep in mind that when we're soloing in a bluesy context or a blues rock context or a country context, often what we're doing is we're using minor pentatonic over a major key. So in this case, we might be using minor pentatonic over an A chord or an A7 chord. It doesn't really make sense, right? The A chord has a major third and A minor pentatonic has a minor third, but we do it all the time. It comes from the blues and it sounds fantastic. So what we can do then is we can bring that major third of the chord underneath back into minor pentatonic. So let's find where that note is. It's here on the G string. In fact, playing those two notes in order, what we're doing is we're going from minor third to major third. So minor third is the one from minor pentatonic, but the major third, the second one there, is from the chord underneath. We can see that. If we play a big A bar chord, we can see that major third is right there. So part of what's so cool about this David Sanborn lick is that he's going to combine using the minor third and the major third. Now, we actually do this a lot on guitar already, but we usually just do it in a different way. A very common way to do it is to do what we call enclosure, which means that we go above the major third, which is there on that 7th fret of the G string, and then we go below the major third, which is 5th fret there, and then we hit the major third. So it goes above, below, and then hit it. There's tons of licks that do that. We could just descend A minor pentatonic, and there it is, right? It resolves really cool. It's a very good bluesy and country thing. And then another common way to finish that lick is to go to the root right afterwards. So we go above the major third, below the major third, hit the major third, and then hit the root, which is on the string below, on the D string. There. Now that's getting to be a pretty cool sound already, but the David Sanborn lick does these notes in a different order. What he does is he chromatically rises up from the minor third to the major third to the 4th to the blue note to the 5th, because if we think about all those notes that we've already mentioned here, we've got this note, 5th fret of the G string, that's the minor third, and that's just in minor pentatonic, right? We talked about this note being the major third because it's in the chord underneath. Now this next note is just in the minor pentatonic, right? It's the 4th, but whatever, it's just in minor pentatonic. And then the next note, the next fret up, right? 8th fret of the G string is the blue note. We mentioned that's in the scale already. Look at all those notes we have in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Minor third, major third, 4th, blue note. But guess what? We've got another one too, because if we go 1 half step higher, now we have the 5th of the key. That note is actually just in minor pentatonic as well, if you think about it. It's on our way up to the extension shape, right? Up to the box, as a lot of people call it. So we have now how many notes in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, 5 notes in a row, fret by fret, chromatically. It's a pretty cool sequence. It's getting kind of jazzy now. So how do we take this sequence and make it into a cool lick? Because on their own, it sounds kind of cool, but maybe it's still a bit of an exercise. But David Sanborn does this. Now that's a cool sounding lick. So what is it? He's just starting on the root first, and then he's playing that chromatic run going up, going right back to the root, so it's a bit of a jump there. And then he's doing a hammer. Well, he doesn't hammer, he's on a saxophone, but we'll do it as a hammer. He does it like a, what would they call it on saxophone? I don't know, legato, something like that. They got fancy terms of their own, right? We're gonna do a hammer on from 5 to 6. That's hammering on the minor third to the major third. And then we're gonna go back to the root again. So we go root, minor third, major third, fourth, blue note, fifth, back to the root, and then we hammer minor third to major third, and then root again. Now, the interesting thing about this on guitar is that we could place the notes on different strings, right? Because right now, it's not the easiest lick to play. And that happens a lot when we're taking licks from other instruments, right? Because when you think about it, that lick might be easy on a saxophone in certain keys. I have no idea, I don't play saxophone. Regardless, for us on guitar, sometimes all we have to do is take one of those notes and move them to the next string up. And sometimes that just makes it a little easier to play. Now, honestly, I do play it like we were just playing it, but here's 2 other cool options that you might find more comfortable. So if we just take the chromatic run up, that last one there, 9th fret of the G string, is the same note as 5th fret of the B string, right? They're both an E note. So we could just move that note up a string, and then it would be like this. Maybe that is easier. Maybe it's just a little harder to memorize. It's so easy to memorize the other one because all those chromatic notes are in a row. But this one is easier to play. Now, I think that is a very tasty lick. That is so interesting with all those notes that kind of rub against the chord but then resolve. Which, speaking of, we should hear that against a jam track. This will work great in a blues context. It'll work great in a rock context. Anything that's kind of jazzy or funky or neo-soul. It'll work in so many different genres. Let's hear a couple examples. That last example, the rock example, was in a different key, right? That was in D. But that's the beautiful thing about the guitar, is we can just memorize a lick and we can just move it up the fretboard, right? We didn't have to think too much. All I did was just think D minor pentatonic, which is here. And then I just played the lick. Because I memorized the shape that starts on the root. Now we've got 2 ways to play the lick, but we want to be able to play it anywhere on the fretboard, right? So one way to do it is to think of pentatonic shapes, but as you've kind of noticed, this lick, it doesn't really fit the pentatonic shape. There's so many chromatic notes there, right? So another way to look at it is simply to find the root, because we know the lick starts on the root. We could find a root anywhere. Let's say we find this A here. This is 10th fret of the B string. Now you gotta be quick at knowing where those are, right? But you can find them. Often when you're just playing something, let's say you're playing A major pentatonic, you might know where the root in the shape is anyway. So that's an A. Now we gotta know, just like before, I just think, well, what's a major third shape? That's a major third. And therefore, this is a minor third. Now we already have everything we need to play the lick because I know that the lick goes root, minor third, and then runs up chromatically all the way to the fifth again, right? So that's here. There's the first part of it. And then I know it goes back to the root. I already know where that is because I already played it. And then I know it goes minor third, major third, and back to the root. That's the whole lick. That is a very cool lick. I like it up high like that. That sounds a little more in the spirit of the David Sanborn lick that I remember. But of course, I still don't remember what song it was. Let's hear it with the 2 jam tracks. So what do you guys think? Do you think it's a good idea to steal other people's licks? Some say that it makes you sound too much like everyone else. But honestly, I think that we inevitably put our own personality into other people's licks anyway. We all have a slightly different sense of rhythm. Some of us play slightly behind the beat, some of us play slightly ahead of the beat. And not only that, but I find that with the licks that I have memorized from other people, over time, you kind of forget what the original lick was precisely. You start to change it without realizing it. Maybe you've changed the rhythm a little bit. Maybe you've even changed a note here and there. And guess what? Now you pretty much have your own lick. Another thing that I've been thinking is that if we listen only to guitar-based music, then we're only exposing ourselves to guitar sounds, to guitar licks, to guitar ideas. And that's likely what's to come out, right? But if we listen to more music, or even just some music that is maybe piano-based or horn-based, listen to some jazz, listen to some other genres, then we're exposed to more different ideas, even if it's just a little bit. Even if we're not actually transcribing that music, the sounds and the ideas hopefully will come out. I think 2 really good examples of this, that's from a long time ago, but I think they're great examples, are one, Charlie Christian, who at that time, he was one of the first electric guitar players, so he didn't have a lot of guitar licks that he could even steal from, right? So what did he do? Well, he listened to the horn players at the time. He listened to what the jazz saxophone players were playing, what the trumpet players were playing, and guess what? He used those licks, and it does sound amazing. And the other example is Chuck Berry. We think of Chuck Berry as being such a guitar player. Well, of course he is. But actually, as he said himself, a lot of those early licks, and I mean, you know those ones, they come from piano players because that's what he was exposed to, right? He was playing with piano players a lot at that time, and they were playing things like na 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 na. And guess what? That's what became Chuck Berry's style. If you're looking for more licks, feel free to steal them from my book called Guitar Soloing Like a Pro, which is available on Amazon. And we've got tons of videos on our Patreon. The link to that is below. And here's another video from my channel. My name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons here in Vancouver. I'll see you in the next one.